Daniela Pineda tugged at the hem of her borrowed pink dress for what felt like the 100th time that night. The fabric was beautiful, soft, delicate, clearly expensive, but it belonged to a world that wasn't hers. All around her, crystal chandeliers poured warm golden light over guests who wore their confidence just as effortlessly as they wore their designer clothes. The grand ballroom of the Imperial Hotel hummed with conversations about investment portfolios, international travel, and exclusive circles Daniela had never even heard of. She felt like an actress who had completely forgotten her lines. Her cousin Gabriella had practically begged her to come to the wedding reception, promising it would be fun, promising she wouldn't leave her alone, but now Gabriella was laughing and chatting animatedly in the center of a crowd of her new husband's wealthy friends. And Daniela was left navigating this complicated sea of polished smiles and sharp, measuring glances entirely on her own. She clutched her small purse a little tighter, slowly made her way toward the exit, and had nearly pulled off a clean escape, when she saw him. He was walking directly toward her. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that probably cost more than 3 full months of her salary at El Sol Naciente Bakery. His dark brown hair was slightly tousled, and his green eyes carried something urgent as he closed the distance between them. Before Daniela could even react, he was standing right in front of her. "Please, help me," he murmured, his voice low and surprisingly gentle. "I need you to pretend we're together. Just for a few minutes." Daniela blinked. Completely thrown. "I know how that sounds," he continued quickly, glancing over his shoulder. 2 women in expensive gowns were watching him from across the room without even trying to hide it. "Those ladies have been trying to introduce me to half their family all night. I just need a moment to breathe. Please." There was something so genuinely desperate in his expression, so human and unguarded, that Daniela's natural kindness overrode her confusion entirely. "Okay," she said. "What do I do?" The relief that flooded his face was immediate and real. "Just stay here with me. Talk to me like we've known each other for years. That's all." With careful, unhurried hands, he gently guided her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, near the tall windows overlooking the glittering city below. Daniela noticed how considerate he was, his hand barely grazed her elbow, never crowding her space. When they finally stopped, he let out a long, slow breath. "Thank you. I'm Nicholas Aranda, by the way." Daniela studied him with quiet curiosity. "Do people chase you at every party?" "Only at events like this one," he said, running a hand through his hair with evident exhaustion. "Where everyone seems convinced they know exactly what's best for my life." He paused, and something heavier crept into his voice. "It's been 3 years since I lost my wife. Apparently that makes me the perfect target for every matchmaking attempt in the city." "I'm so sorry about your wife," Daniela said softly, and she meant every word. "Thank you." Nicholas looked at her then, really looked at her, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "You don't exactly look like you want to be here either." Daniela laughed, a light, unguarded laugh that surprised even her, and made him smile. "Is it that obvious?" "A little. My cousin got married today," she said. "And somehow I ended up at a reception where everyone is talking about things I know absolutely nothing about. Honestly, I was trying to sneak out when you found me." She tilted her head. "So we're basically refugees from the same party." Nicholas's smile deepened and reached his eyes, transforming his whole expression. "What do you do when you're not attending weddings you'd rather avoid?" "I work at a bakery downtown. El Sol Naciente, on Juarez Street. I'm an assistant, but I love decorating cakes and coming up with new recipes." Her face lit up the moment she started talking about it. "It's nothing glamorous, but I love it. There's something magical about making things that bring people joy." Nicholas listened with a quality of attention that was rare, leaning in slightly, genuinely interested. That sounds wonderful. What kinds of things have you made? Just last week I made a birthday cake shaped like a castle, with towers dusted in edible glitter. The little girl who received it actually cried when she saw it. Daniela's eyes shone with the memory. Moments like that make everything worth it. You must be incredibly talented, said Nicholas, clearly drawn in by her enthusiasm. My daughter Florencia is obsessed with princesses and castles. She would absolutely lose her mind over something like that. How old is she? 10. She's spending the night at my mom's so I could come tonight. His voice and expression softened the moment he mentioned his daughter. She's the best thing in my life. After her mother passed, Florencia and I had to learn how to be a family of two. Some days are harder than others. Daniela felt her heart tighten with genuine compassion. That must be incredibly hard, for both of you. Sometimes Florencia is stronger than I am, Nicholas admitted quietly. Then he looked at her and asked, what about you? Do you have kids? No, single, no children. Just me, my little apartment, and my sourdough starter that I've somehow kept alive for over 2 years. She smiled shyly. My life is pretty simple compared to all of this. Simple sounds perfect right now, he said, his eyes drifting tiredly across the glittering ballroom. Everything in my world is complicated. Meetings, expectations, keeping up appearances. Sometimes I forget what it feels like to just have a real conversation. And so they talked. For another 40 minutes, long after the original reason he'd needed her company had passed. Daniela learned that he worked in investment banking, that he had a weakness for old mystery novels, and that he missed cooking home meals because he was always too busy. Nicholas learned that Daniela had learned to bake from her grandmother, that she dreamed of opening her own little bakery someday, and that she genuinely believed kindness mattered far more than money. When the reception began to wind down, Nicholas seemed reluctant to let the evening end. Daniela, he said carefully, I know this is going to sound strange given how we met, but would it be alright if I stopped by your bakery sometime? I'd really love to try what you make. She raised an eyebrow. You actually want to visit a small bakery in the middle of downtown? It's nothing fancy. Fancy is overrated, he replied with an easy smile. He took out his phone. Can I get your number? Just in case I get lost trying to find it. Daniela hesitated for barely a second before sharing her contact. When they said goodnight, his hand brushed briefly against hers, warm, unhurried, full of quiet promise. Walking to her car afterward, Daniela couldn't stop smiling. She had arrived at that reception dreading every minute of it, and somehow she had met someone who made her feel seen. Truly seen. It seemed almost impossible that Nicholas Aranda, successful banker, expensive suit and all, would actually show up at El Sol Naciente. But something in his eyes had felt sincere. She drove home through the quiet city streets with a lighter heart than she'd had in months. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters become the most important ones. Daniela didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. All because a desperate man had asked her to pretend, just for a few minutes. 3 days later, the little bell above the bakery door chimed, and Daniela looked up from the cupcakes she was decorating. There was Nicholas Aranda, stepping inside with an expression that was slightly nervous and entirely, genuinely happy to be there. He looked a little out of place in his office suit against the cheerful yellow walls and the warm, enveloping scent of fresh bread, but he was there. Daniela's heart did a small, involuntary leap. She had half convinced herself the connection at the reception had been nothing more than a moment that would fade. You came, she said, unable to hide her smile. I promised I would, he replied, approaching the counter and taking in the display case full of pastries and cakes. Everything looks incredible. What do you recommend? Daniela wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly very aware of the sugar and flour dusting her clothes. The cinnamon rolls just came out of the oven. The lemon lavender cupcakes are my own recipe. I'll take both. He settled into one of the small chairs by the window. And whatever you're having for coffee. Over the next 2 weeks, Nicholas became a regular. He would stop in before work or during his lunch hour, always finding a reason to stay a few minutes longer, always finding his way back into conversation with Daniela. She learned that he was very particular about his coffee, that he had a terrible sweet tooth he tried hard to disguise, and that he was a far better listener than he was a talker. He discovered that Daniela hummed while she worked, that she remembered every regular customer's favorite order, and that her laugh was contagious. Then one Saturday afternoon, Nicholas arrived with a little girl beside him. She had his same green eyes. Dark hair pulled into 2 neat braids. A worn, well-loved stuffed rabbit clutched tightly against her chest. "Daniela, this is my daughter Florencia," Nicholas said warmly, his hand resting gently on the girl's shoulder. "Florencia, this is Miss Daniela, the baker I've been telling you about." Florencia looked up at Daniela with wide, curious eyes. "My dad says you do magic with frosting." Daniela crouched down to the little girl's level, her heart absolutely melting. "I don't know if it's magic exactly, but I do give it everything I've got." "Do you like baking, Florencia?" The girl nodded enthusiastically. "Sometimes I help my dad make pancakes, but they always come out lumpy." "That's because your dad doesn't let the batter rest," Daniela said in a conspiratorial whisper, making Florencia burst into giggles. "Would you like to help me decorate some cupcakes? I'm working on a special order for a birthday party." Florencia's face lit up brighter than the overhead lights. "Can I, Dad?" "Really?" Nicholas smiled, softly, genuinely, in a way Daniela hadn't seen from him before. "If Miss Daniela doesn't mind having an assistant this afternoon." "I would love the company," Daniela said. She stood and extended her hand to Florencia. "Come on, let's get you an apron." That afternoon changed something between the 3 of them. Florencia turned out to be a natural. Her small hand stayed surprisingly steady as Daniela walked her through piping buttercream roses. Nicholas sat at a nearby table, his laptop completely forgotten, watching his daughter with quiet wonder. Every time Florencia finished a design, she would spin around to show her dad, and the proud, radiant smile on his face sent a warmth straight through Daniela's chest. "Look, Dad, I made a butterfly." Florencia held up a cupcake decorated with purple and pink wings. "It's beautiful, my love," Nicholas said, coming over to admire it. "You're a natural artist." He glanced at Daniela. "Miss Daniela is an excellent teacher." Florencia looked at Daniela with pure, open adoration as the golden afternoon light poured through the windows and filled the whole space with warmth. Something shifted inside Daniela in that moment. This was no longer just about the quiet pull she felt toward Nicholas. It was deeper than that. More complex. She was falling for both of them, the quiet man who looked at his daughter like she was the center of the universe, and the sweet little girl who had lost her mother far too soon. When closing time came, Florencia wrapped her arms around Daniela's waist and held on tight. "Thank you for teaching me. Can I come back next week?" "Whenever you want," Daniela promised, and she looked up to find Nicholas watching her over the top of his daughter's head, his expression full of something that didn't need words. After Florencia ran ahead to the car, Nicholas lingered for a moment. "Thank you for today. I haven't seen her that happy in a long time." He paused. "And honestly, I haven't felt that way in a while either." "I loved every minute of it," Daniela said, fidgeting with the strings of her apron. "She's an incredible kid, Nicholas." He took a breath. "I'd like to take you to dinner." The words came out quickly, like he'd been holding them back for weeks. A real date, if you're interested. Daniela's smile was all the answer he needed. Very interested. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away on a quiet side street. Nicholas had chosen it deliberately, intimate and unhurried, nothing like the loud, showy places his colleagues preferred. Over pasta and wine, they talked about everything and nothing. Nicholas told her how he'd met his late wife in university, about the accident that had taken her 3 years ago, and about how hard it had been learning to be both mother and father to Florencia at the same time. Some days I feel like I'm failing her, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. I work too much because I don't know any other way to provide for her, and then I missed the moments that actually matter. Last month I missed her school play because of a meeting. He stared at the table. I still can't forgive myself for that. Daniela reached across the table and took his hand without hesitating. You are not failing her, she said firmly. You're present. You love her. You keep trying. That's what counts. She held his gaze. And Nicholas, you're also allowed to have a life. You're allowed to be happy again. His fingers closed around hers slowly, deliberately. I haven't felt this way since before the accident, he said quietly. It scares me a little. It scares me too, she admitted. But maybe that means it's real. That night he kissed her outside the restaurant, soft and unhurried, full of quiet promise. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead gently against hers. I want to do this right, he whispered. With you. With Florencia. I want to build something real. So do I. The months that followed unfolded like pages of a beautiful book. Nicholas brought Daniela into his and Florencia's life carefully and thoughtfully, making sure at every step that his daughter felt secure and happy. Florencia adored Daniela and asked constantly when they could visit the bakery or whether Daniela could come for dinner. Daniela taught her more baking techniques, and the little girl's confidence bloomed with every recipe she mastered. For Florencia's 11th birthday, Daniela and Nicholas planned a party together in the bakery after hours. Daniela had created a 3-tier princess castle cake with wafer towers and edible pearls. When Florencia saw it, she burst into happy tears. It's the most beautiful cake I've ever seen in my whole life. She threw her arms around Daniela. You're the best, Miss Daniela. I wish you could be with us forever. Over the top of Florencia's head, Daniela's eyes found Nicholas's. The emotion in his expression stole the breath right out of her lungs. They both understood what the little girl's innocent wish really meant. This was becoming a family, slowly, naturally, built on genuine love rather than convenience or obligation. One warm evening, after Florencia had fallen asleep, Daniela and Nicholas sat together in the small backyard patio of his house. The night air was soft and sweet with the scent of jasmine. I need to tell you something, Nicholas said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. My mother wants to meet you. Daniela felt a flutter of nerves move through her chest. That sounds significant. It is. She's very protective, of Florencia and of me. After my wife passed, she became even more involved in our lives. She means well, but she can be complicated. He took Daniela's hand. I want her to meet you because you matter to me. To us. I want to meet her too, Daniela said, squeezing his hand and trying to sound braver than she felt. When? Next Sunday. A family dinner at her house. He pulled her a little closer. Fair warning, she will ask a million questions and will probably find a way to judge everything from your shoes to your career choices. Good thing I'm used to dealing with difficult customers at the bakery, Daniela said lightly, though her stomach had already tied itself into a knot. Nicholas kissed her forehead with quiet tenderness. You're going to be wonderful. Just be yourself. That's all Florencia and I have ever needed from you. But driving home that night, Daniela couldn't shake the feeling that meeting Nicholas's mother was a test she wasn't sure she could pass. The Aranda family came from old money, generations of social standing and influence. She was a baker from a humble background, living paycheck to paycheck. Would that ever be enough for a woman who had always expected her son to marry within her world? That question followed her all the way home and kept her staring at the ceiling long after she'd gone to bed. She had fallen completely in love with Nicholas and Florencia. The thought of losing them, because she didn't measure up to some standard she could never change, ached in a way she hadn't expected. But she also knew she couldn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. Whatever happened at that family dinner, she would face it as herself, and hope that love was enough to bridge the distance between their very different worlds. The Aranda family home sat behind tall iron gates, surrounded by manicured gardens that seemed to stretch on without end. Daniela's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as she turned up the circular driveway. Nicholas had offered to pick her up, but she'd insisted on coming herself. She needed the independence, and the knowledge that she had her own way out if things went badly. Nicholas was waiting at the front door, handsome in casual trousers and a neatly pressed shirt. He kissed her cheek and whispered, "You look beautiful. Breathe. It's going to be fine." Florencia came bounding down the hallway, face glowing. "Daniela, you're here. Come see the garden, Grandma has roses everywhere." But before Daniela could follow her, a tall woman with silver hair and sharp, assessing blue eyes appeared in the doorway of the dining room. Dona Margarita Aranda wore pearls and a look of careful judgment in equal measure. Her gaze moved over Daniela from head to toe, slow and deliberate. "So you're the baker," she said in a tone that was technically neutral, but the implication beneath it was unmistakable. "Yes, ma'am. Daniela Pineda." Daniela extended her hand and willed it not to shake. "Thank you so much for having me in your home." Margarita's handshake was brief and cool. "Nicholas speaks very highly of you. And Florencia hardly talks about anything else. I thought it was time we met properly." Dinner became a masterclass in polite interrogation. Margarita asked about Daniela's family background, her education, her professional ambitions. Every question seemed precisely engineered to highlight the gap between Daniela's modest upbringing and the Aranda legacy. Nicholas tried repeatedly to steer the conversation somewhere safer, but his mother was relentless. "So you work at someone else's bakery," Margarita said during the main course. "Do you have plans to advance your career, or is this more of a long-term arrangement?" Daniela set her fork down calmly. "I love what I do, Señora Aranda. I'm learning the business side of things while I save. Eventually, I'd like to have my own place, but I want to do it properly, without rushing." She kept her voice steady. "It's not a glamorous path, but it's mine." "How practical," said Margarita, in a tone dripping with polite condescension. "Though I imagine it must be difficult to get by on a baker's salary in this city. The cost of living is quite steep." "Mother." Nicholas's voice sharpened. "That's enough. I'm simply having a conversation, Nicholas," Margarita replied smoothly, turning back to Daniela. "You have to understand my concern. My son is a very successful man with a great many responsibilities. Florencia needs stability. And someone who understands the demands that come with our family's position." The heat rose in Daniela's face. She was searching for the right words, something honest, something dignified, when a clear, firm voice cut through the table. "Abuela, that's not fair." Everyone went still. Florencia sat with her chin lifted and her eyes steady, looking directly at her grandmother. "Daniela is the kindest person I know. She makes me and Papa happy. Isn't that what matters?" Silence settled over the table like a held breath. Margarita looked genuinely taken aback, visibly stunned that her granddaughter had just stood up to her. Nicholas's eyes were bright with pride he wasn't even trying to conceal. Daniela felt tears pressing at the back of her eyes and blinked hard against them. "Florencia," Margarita began. But Florencia wasn't finished. Mama would have loved Daniela. Her voice trembled slightly, but it didn't waver. She always said the most important thing was to be good to people. Daniela is good to us. She teaches me things. She makes Papa smile again. She looked at her grandmother with clear, earnest eyes. Why doesn't that count? The words landed with the quiet weight of absolute truth. Nicholas reached over and took his daughter's hand. His own eyes were unmistakably bright. Daniela couldn't hold it back anymore, a single tear slipped down her cheek. Margarita was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, something in her voice had softened. "You're right, Florencia. Your mother valued kindness above everything else." She paused. "I think I lost sight of that in my worry for your future." The tension didn't evaporate completely, but something shifted. Margarita began asking more genuine questions about Daniela's work, the craft, the creativity, the artistry behind what she did, and seemed genuinely surprised by the depth of it. By the time dessert arrived, the conversation had become almost warm. As they were saying goodbye, Margarita drew Daniela aside while Nicholas helped Florencia with her jacket. Her voice was low and private. "I was harder on you tonight than I should have been," she said. "I owe you an apology." She looked at Daniela steadily. "Losing my daughter-in-law nearly broke this family. I've been terrified ever since of watching Nicholas and Florencia suffer again. But I can see that you love them. Genuinely. And that matters more than I was willing to admit." Daniela nodded, accepting the olive branch with quiet grace. "I do love them. Very much. Maybe we could start over." Margarita studied her for a moment, then gave the smallest nod. "Call me Margarita." 3 months later, Daniela was overseeing the installation of new ovens when Nicholas walked into the bakery wearing a smile she'd never quite seen before. "I have news," he announced. "Do you remember that property you loved on Independencia Street? The one on the corner with the big windows?" Daniela's heart jumped straight into her throat. "The old bookshop. The one that's been on the market for years." "Not anymore." He pulled papers from his bag and set them on the counter. "I bought it. For your bakery. Consider it an investment in your dream, and in our future." Daniela stared at him, overwhelmed. "Nicholas, I can't accept something like that. It's too much, it's not a gift. It's a business investment. You'll pay me back with the profits." He took her hands in both of his. "You are brilliant at what you do, Daniela. You deserve a space that's worthy of your talent. Let me help make that happen." She burst into tears and threw her arms around him. "Thank you. Thank you so much." The opening of Daniela's second location took 6 months of intense, joyful work. She designed every detail herself: vintage-style display cases, a cozy reading nook where customers could sit and enjoy their pastries, fresh flowers on every table. Florencia helped choose the paint colors and design the logo, a simple sunrise over a rolling pin. Nicholas handled the permits and the financing, turning Daniela's dream into something real and solid in hers. The grand opening was set for a Saturday morning in spring. Daniela arrived early to finish the final touches. She was arranging fresh flowers on the tables when she heard the door open behind her. "We're not open yet," she called without turning around. "Not even for your biggest fans." She spun around. Nicholas and Florencia stood in the doorway, but they weren't alone. Behind them was what appeared to be half the neighborhood, carrying flowers and gifts and wearing enormous smiles. Margarita was there too, elegantly dressed and, for once, genuinely warm. "What is all this?" Daniela asked, completely overwhelmed. "We couldn't let you open this place without a proper celebration," Nicholas said, walking toward her. "You've worked too hard for this moment." Florencia ran ahead and wrapped both arms around her. "We are so proud of you." As friends and regular customers poured in, admiring the space and tasting the sweets, Nicholas guided Daniela to a quieter corner near the kitchen. His expression was nervous in a way she'd never seen before, nervous and certain at the same time. "I've been planning this," he said quietly. "I kept waiting for the perfect moment, and I think this is it. You're opening this beautiful place, everything you worked for, everything you dreamed about. And I want to be part of every dream you have, Daniela." He reached into his jacket pocket. "Every single one." He dropped to one knee. Daniela's hands flew to her mouth. "Daniela Pineda, you walked into my life at a moment when I had forgotten how to truly live. You brought joy back into our home. You taught my daughter to dream big. And you showed me that love can bloom more than once in a lifetime." His voice was steady and full. "Will you marry me? Will you be part of our family, officially, completely, forever?" "Yes." The word came out in a whisper, broken by happy tears. "Yes. Of course, yes." Nicholas slid the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her as the room erupted in applause. Florencia came sprinting across the bakery and launched herself into both of them, shrieking with pure delight. Margarita, standing near the back, pressed a handkerchief quietly to the corner of her eye, and smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since Daniela had met her. The opening was more successful than Daniela had ever dared to imagine. Customers fell in love with the atmosphere and the exceptional pastries. Local food bloggers wrote glowing reviews. Within a month, Daniela had hired 2 assistants and was already thinking about expanding the menu. But the best moment came 6 months later. On a cool October afternoon, Daniela married Nicolas Aranda in El Sol Naciente, the bakery where their story had truly begun. They had considered elegant venues and elaborate ceremonies, but Daniela had insisted. This was where it had started. This was where it should be celebrated. Surrounded by the warm, enveloping scent of cinnamon, vanilla, and fresh bread, Florencia served as flower girl in a soft yellow dress, carrying a bouquet of sunflowers. She had written a poem for the ceremony, about how families are like recipes, different ingredients coming together to create something wonderful. There wasn't a dry eye in the room when she finished reading it. When the toasts began, Margarita surprised everyone. She rose, lifted her glass, and let her voice carry across the room with quiet conviction. "I had my doubts at the beginning," she said honestly. "But Daniela has shown me that love and character are worth far more than social standing or money in the bank. She brought life back to this family. And for that, I am eternally grateful." She looked directly at Daniela, her expression open and genuine for the first time. "Welcome to the family, Daniela. Truly." Later that evening, as the reception continued around them, Daniela and Nicholas slipped outside together for a quiet moment alone. The city lights were just beginning to come on. The air was cool and perfect. "Happy?" Nicholas asked, pulling her close. "So happy," Daniela answered, leaning into him. "Who would have ever thought that one desperate little request at a party would lead us all the way here?" "I think about that moment all the time," he said softly. "That night I was so exhausted. So lonely. So tired of pretending." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "And then there you were. So kind. So real. So completely yourself." His arms tightened around her. "You saved me, Daniela." "We saved each other," she said gently. "You believed in my dreams when I was too afraid to believe in them myself. You and Florencia gave me a family I never knew I was missing. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the evening settle over the city. Through the window, they could see Florencia teaching Margarita how to pipe frosting onto cupcakes. The two of them were laughing, really laughing, at their messy, imperfect attempts, the counter between them covered in colorful swirls of buttercream. Daniela's parents were talking animatedly with Nicholas's business partners. Every wall that had once divided their very different worlds had dissolved in the warmth of that small, glowing room. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Nicholas asked quietly. "Of course. You asked me to pretend." He turned to look at her. His green eyes were serious and full of love. "The irony is that I asked you to fake something that became the most real thing in my life. This marriage. This family. This love." He shook his head slowly, still almost in disbelief. "It's more genuine than anything I've ever known." Daniela reached up and touched his face with gentle hands. "No more pretending," she said softly. "Only truth. From here on." "Only truth," he agreed, and sealed it with a long, deep kiss. When they stepped back inside, Daniela caught Florencia's eye through the window. The little girl waved wildly, her face blazing with happiness. Daniela waved back, her heart so full she was sure it might overflow. Months ago, she had walked into a party feeling lost and out of place, counting down the seconds until she could leave. Instead, she had found her home, not in a building, not in an address, but in the hearts of two people who needed her as much as she needed them. The best love stories don't always begin the way you expect. Sometimes they begin with a simple request from a stranger, a small moment of kindness that opens the door to forever. The lights of the bakery glowed warm and golden as friends and family celebrated inside, filling every corner with laughter and joy. Daniela Aranda smiled, knowing that every future morning would begin here, in the place she had built alongside the family she had found, creating sweetness in all its forms for a world that needed it so deeply. And somewhere above it all, she liked to imagine, a woman named Clara was smiling too, grateful that her husband and her daughter had found their way back to love, that happiness had returned to the home she'd had to leave behind, and that life had continued in the most beautiful way possible. And you, would you have said yes that night, if you'd been in Daniela's place? Sometimes one small act of kindness is all it takes to change an entire life. If this story moved you, I'd love it if you'd hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is there right now. Thank you so much for staying until the very end. Your time means everything. Until the next story.